Hello, everybody. At the end of this small chapter on the fundamental freedoms, let me make some short remarks about the inner relationship between the harmonization of EU rules and the changes of national rules, which are enforced by jurisdiction due to the identification of a rule as forbidden restriction. As you already know, the EU institutions can issue directives and regulations on every legal field which affects the proper functioning of the common market, or as it also is called, common market or internal market. Now, in order to preserve as much of the autonomy of the member states as possible, the EU treaties contain a principle of subsidiarity that is laid down in Article 5, Paragraph 3 of the Treaty on the EU, so that very basic treaty, which contains the general principles. Here you have the rule that the EU is only allowed to become active if the member states alone cannot achieve the treaties of the EU, the aims of the EU treaties, and whatever that entails, if they cannot achieve these aims sufficiently on their own, but a common solution is needed by EU institutions, or a common solution by the EU institutions can achieve the aims far better. So that means that harmonization by directives and regulations is only allowed if the member states themselves cannot remove the problems alone, at least not sufficiently alone. What does that now mean for our tax area? Well, with regard to the question in how far national tax rules can be seen as a violation of fundamental freedoms or not, this has, in a certain way, surprising implications in the long run. Very interesting, because have a look at the starting point of a problem. You identify there's something which is a problem for the proper functioning of the internal market. Then the EU treaties say, well, we must remove the obstacles. Now, the subsidiarity principle comes and says, okay, now let's think about who has to remove the obstacle. First, it is possible that you can, from a legal point of view, identify that obstacle as a restriction. So you see, it is caused by the law of one member state alone. That law doesn't comply with the demands and requirements of a single market, so you have a restriction. On the other hand, the first test which you make here might lead to the conclusion or to the result this obstacle cannot be qualified as a restriction. It follows from the sheer coexistence of several different legal rules on the national level, which all of them taken individually could form a viable solution for the internal market, a legitimate rule. Now, these two possibilities, or these two cases, have to be distinguished. In the case that we have a restriction, it is possible that we can prove the obstacle is unjustified. The national rule is not justified. It cannot pass the 4 criteria test, or it can be proven to be an unjustified discrimination or the like. In such a case, the member state in question must adjust the existing rule and change it, but on its own. On the other hand, it might turn out the member state in question can justify the rule as something which is necessary. Now, in both cases, which are here in blue, we have a problem which a member state alone cannot solve individually, because in the right alternative, that the solution in itself would be okay, but the difference of different national legal systems leads to problems. A member state alone cannot solve the problem. You would have to remove the existence of different solutions. Or, in the other alternative, here in the middle, there is a restriction, but the member state must insist on it, because otherwise its legal system couldn't function. So there are evidently problems which a member state alone could not remove. In both cases, then you have the conclusion that the solution must be found by a central harmonization in form of a directive which takes into account the problem and solves it. On the other hand, the member state would have to solve the thing by national rule. Now that means in the right part of the chart, where we have proven that our national rule at the moment need not to be changed, we have automatically proven that there is a right and a duty of the EU Commission and the other EU institutions to harmonize that problem in the long run by directives or even regulations. So when you insisted that, yeah, your national rule can be upheld because it's absolutely unchangeable, it's justified, or it does not even form a restriction, what you then prove is, in the long run, that your national tax autonomy in that field has to be cancelled, and that already under the existing treaty rules, the EU has the competence to remove the national authorities here, tax autonomy here, and to replace it by one single central solution. Only in the case where you can receive in court the proof that your existing rule is responsible for the problems alone, that it is a forbidden restriction or forbidden discrimination, then you can fix the matter on your own. And then you have ended up with a limitation of your national tax autonomy. This specific solution has to be modified, it's no longer allowed. But you preserve that national autonomy in the long run, because you have got the official juridical confirmation by the highest court in Europe that the problem can be solved on your own, so that a legal harmonization by the EU Commission and the directive is, at the moment, and probably also in the long run, not necessary and therefore not allowed. So here we have slightly and surprising contradictory results. If a member state really defends one of its national rules in court successfully, this is in the long run rather a shot into one's own knee, because here you officially get the attestation that, or you even long for it, that you can't fix the problems on your own, so that in the long run, logically, there must be an EU solution. So here you cut back more and more of your tax sovereignty in the long run. On the other hand, when you have no success, and if you lose a court lawsuit before the European Court of Justice, and you get the attestation, well, your momentary rule, which causes the problem, is wrong, unjustified, it must be corrected, then what you take home is the official attestation that this is a matter which, even in the long run, a single member state can still fix on its own, so that there is no legal basis for a central harmonized solution on EU level. So who begins and goes to court in order to defend an existing national rule in the long run kills national tax autonomy, who has an unsuccessful outcome goes home and takes home the attestation that national autonomy can go on to exist for a longer time. So that's rather surprising, and this is something which many people do not really realize. Well, sometimes I think probably people who are a bit short-sighted just console or comfort themselves with the idea, okay, we have not just now defended our existing rule and therefore undermined our tax autonomy in the long run, but well, in the long run, there will be never a political consent on that, so no problem. But that can be rather short-sighted, because if problems pile up more and more, it can be that after a certain while there is a political consent suddenly, and out of a wave of well, or in a mood of certain willingness to solve problems, it might be that politicians then give consent suddenly after some 10 or 20 years, and then your tax autonomy in certain areas is definitively lost and gone. This is something which is surprising, and which is nevertheless logically compelling. Okay, that was my remark on the relationship between subsidiarity principle, the identification of something as a forbidden restriction on the one hand, and the need to harmonize rules on the other hand. Thanks for watching. I look forward to meet you again on this channel. Goodbye till next time.